How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nunvav, Daf 56 of Masechta Nazir. Friends, Friends, today's daf is really hard. I would say take out your brains, but I also don't want to give you false hopes. Taking out your brains isn't going to help. Anyways, no, it's just going to mess with your brain a little bit. Alright, so let's start on Daf Nunhei and Beis. Oh, and I guess we're going to try to finish the 7th parak of Masechta Nazir. We only have about 10 daf left of Masechta Nazir, which, I'll be honest, I'm kind of excited about it. Not because, Masechta Nazir is fine, but the fact that I don't have Rashi, we've already been 5 months basically without Rashi. Like, okay, I want to get Rashi back already, you know? Alright, so we're going to start on Daf Nunheim with Beis, about 2 lines from the bottom. Moshev Rami Bar Chomit Asakasha, and Asakasha and his father-in-law Rav Chizda. That Rav Chizda had said that when we say that the time of Nazirus, the time of Mitzorah, Tzaras, if a fellow is tummy with Tzaras, it does not count towards his Nazirus. That is only by a 30-day Nazir experience, but by a longer Nazirus, it would count. So now, right, so the days of Tzaras would count towards the Nazirus. So now, Mos Rami Bacham Asakasha. Nazir Shoya, Tome Besafik, Umucha Besafik. It hurts my brain even to just read those words. Alright. Okay, you have a Nazir, now we have a Nazir. And there's a chance that he's Tamei Tumas Meis, and there's a chance that he's a Mitzorah, and there's a chance that he's neither. Okay. Okay. He can eat korbanos after 60 days, and he can drink wine and become tamei meis, i.e. his Nazirus is over after 120 days. Why? Alright. Surely get your act together. Get it together. You got this. You can do it. You can do it. I need confidence. I need confidence that I can do it. I can do it. I just don't want to do it. That's the problem. I don't want to do it. But if I don't do it, we're just going to be stuck here all day, and you guys don't want that. You don't want me to just listen to me whining forever, because if I whine forever, you're still going to have to learn the daf. So I need to just get my act together and just suck it up and just explain the sugya. Sucking it up. Now explaining the sugya. Okay. You got this guy. He's doing a 30-day Nazir experience. Now, he's doing a 30-day Nazir experience. Now, on the first day of his 30-day Nazir experience, he thinks that maybe he's Tamei Tumas Hameis, and maybe he's a Mitzorah, maybe he's neither. Okay. So now, here's the thing. Now, obviously, a Nazir can't cut his hair. So now, normally after Tumas Hameis, so on day 3 and day 7, they sprinkle you with the Paraduma water, and then you are, and then if you're a Nazir and you become Tamei Tumas Hameis, you got to get a haircut. You got to start all over. But the thing is, we're not sure that he's Tamei Tumas Hameis. He might not be, in which case he's a Nazir and he can't get a haircut. Okay, so that's problem number 1. Now, Mitzorah is similar. A Mitzorah, how does that work? If a fellow is a Mitzorah, so then when his Tzaras goes away, he needs to get a haircut. And then after he gets a haircut, he waits another 7 days, or at least another 7 days. And then he gets another haircut and brings his korbanos. So a Mitzorah needs to get 2 sets of haircuts as part, right? And in that case, you shave all of his hair. And that happens as part of his purification process. So here you have a guy, he's a Safek, he's a Mitzorah, Safek, he's Tamei Tumas Hameis, and it could be that he's neither. So therefore he can't get any haircuts until after the 30-day Nazir experience is over. So at least at that point, we can rule out that we can rule out him being a Nazir. So he waits till his 30-day Nazir experience is over, and then he cuts his hair. Now, if he's not Tameh at all, so he's cutting his hair because it's the end of his Nazirus. Now, he also needs to get a haircut out of concern that maybe he's Tameh. He also needs to get a haircut out of concern that maybe he was Tameh with Tsaras. So he gets a haircut after 30 days, and we count that towards as the haircut from the first of his Mitzorah haircuts. The first of his Tsaras haircuts happens 30 days after the beginning of his Nazirus. Fine, the Nazirus is over. He gets a haircut. If he's not Tameh at all, it'll be his haircut for Nazirus. If he was Tameh with Tsaras, so then this is his shaving of his whole body for Tsaras. But now, 7 days late, now he's going to have to wait 7 days and get the second haircut, shaving of all of his body for Tsaras, as part of the Tsaras purification process. But again, he can't do that 7 days later, because let's say he was Tameh Tumas Hameis. If he's Tameh Tumas Hameis, well then he has to start all over again after he gets his haircut, in which case he has to wait another 30 days before he can get his next haircut. Now, at the end of the second 30 days, which is 60 days, he gets another haircut, and this time it's for the second Tsaras stuff. This time it's for the second Tsaras. So now, after 60 days, he gets his second shaving of his entire body for Tsaras, and now Tsaras is behind him. And therefore he can eat kachim, therefore he can eat korbanos. So that right, so therefore, we said, Ocha b'kachim lachar shishim yom. After 60 days he can eat korbanos, because that's how long it takes until he can finally get the possibility of being a Mitzorah behind him. Now, the thing is, if he was a Mitzorah, then none of the days up until now counted, right? Because we said that the days that he's a Mitzorah don't count towards his Nazirus. So therefore, if we're concerned that he was a Mitzorah, so nothing of his Nazirus counted until now. Therefore, now he has to wait another 30 days, and only at that point would he be able to get his haircut for possibly being a Tameh Tumas Hameis. For being Tameh Tumas Hameis. Right? Because we have to be concerned that maybe he was Tameh Tumas Hameis, in which case he hasn't yet cut his hair yet for being Tameh Tumas Hameis, but he can't get that haircut yet, because if he was potentially Tameh with Tsaras, well then nothing has counted yet from his Nazirus, and he can't get his haircut for Tumas Hameis while he's a Nazir. So therefore, he has to wait another 30 days, and then he can get his Tsaras, and then he can get his haircut for being Tameh Tumas Hameis. And if he was Tameh Tumas Hameis, then he needs to start over another 30 days, which means that after a fourth set of 30 days, 120 days, he could finally get his Nazirus behind him and drink wine and become Tameh Hameis and all that kind of stuff. Now you understand why I was stressing out so much about this sugya. It just messes with your head. That's it. It just messes with your head a little bit. So again, from the top of the page, oichel b'kachim lachar shishim yom. So you can eat kachim after 60 days. V'shosa yayin b'tamei l'meisim lachar mei v'esem yom, and he could drink wine and become tamei to the dead after 120 days. And v'tani olo, and we taught about it. That's only talking about it if it's a 30-day Nazir experience. But if we were talking about a longer Nazirus of a year, well then everything is now in increments of a year instead of 30 days. Right? So we said if it's a 30-day Nazir experience, so then, it's 30 days for this, 30 days for that, right? It's 4 increments of 30 days. If it's a 1 year Nazir experience, then it's always an increment of a year. So it'll be 2 years before he can eat kachim, and then 4 years before he can become Tameh Tumas Hameis and drink wine again. But now here's the kasha. V'yisakadaitich salkin le yomei tizge le b'shalish shonim v'shloshim yom. Now, if it enters your mind, like Rav Chizda said, which is that by a longer Nazirus, such as this, a 1-year Nazirus, so then, if what Rav Chizda is saying that by longer Naziruses, then the tsaras, the time that you're tummy with tsaras, does count towards the Nazirus, well then, it should be enough that he should be able to be done with his Nazirus, not after 4 years, but after 3 years and 30 days. Let's see if I remember why. Well, because the first 2 years, right, meaning we said that he becomes tummy on the first day of his Nazirus. So now he can't get a haircut for anything until at the end of the 1 year period, right, which is when he could first get his when he can get his first haircut, if he wasn't tamei at all, so that would be his haircut for his Nazirus. If he was tamei with tsaras, then it can count for his tsaras, but then he can't immediately get his next tsaras one, meaning 7 days later, because maybe he was tamei tumas hameis, which means that he has to wait another, or he has to do it all over again, which means that he can't get his next haircut for tsaras until the end of the 2nd year. But if you say that all that time that he's a Mitzorah counts towards his Nazirus, well, if that's the case, then comes the end of the 2 years, his Nazirus is all over. Comes the end of the 2 years, his Nazirus is all over. And now, but what would happen if he actually was not, is this what it is? What would happen though if he needs to also wait for the so technical, I think I lost it. Give me a second, I have to remember, 1 second. Right, so I think it's that, right, so if he was tamei with tsaras, right, so then, sure, it counts towards his Nazirus, but he hasn't yet shaved for his Nazirus, right? So he's going to have to shave for his Nazirus, but he can't do that with less than 30 days, right? So therefore, he's going to have to wait 30 days, just in case, he was tamei with tsaras. So then, now that he's done his 2 shavings for his tsaras, he now needs to wait 30 days, then he can do his shaving for Nazirus. But what if he actually was tamei? What if he was tamei with tsaras and tumas hameis? Well, then that means that he hasn't yet shaved his head for tumas hameis. So then after those 30 days, after the 2 years and 30 days, he's actually shaving for tumas hameis. And if he was tamei tumas hameis, then that means he has to start over another 1 year experience, which means gives him another year, which is 3 years and 30 days. I don't know. Maybe I did the math right. Maybe I did the math wrong. It was really complicated. The point being, though, that we said that if it was a 1 year Nazir experience, then he's going to have to wait 4 years till he's done with all this business. But if what Rav Chizda is saying is correct, that when it's a longer Nazirus, then the time from being a Mitzorah counts towards the time being a Mitzorah counts towards the Nazirus, well then you shouldn't have to wait 4 years, it should be enough for 3 years and 30 days. That's the kasha on Rav Chizda. We also ask another kasha. Most of Rav Ashi asks the kasha. In the elu you made tuma shen on lo min minyan. All I know is that when a fellow is tamei tumas hameis, if a nazir is tamei tumas hameis, so the time that he's tamei with tumas hameis does not count towards his nazirus. Of course, he's got to start over afterwards. You may chaluto minayin. How do I know that oichit? When he's a mitzorah, a definite mitzorah, when he has tsaras, how do I know that also does not count towards the length of his nazirus? Vidinu. So we say, well, we can learn it out logically. You may tuma megaleach maybe korban. Well, when he's tamei tumas hameis as a nazir, when he becomes pure, he needs to get a haircut and bring korbanis. V'yimei chaluto megaleach maybe korban. And also when a fellow is a mitzorah, at the end, he cuts all of the hair of his body and brings a korban. So just like when he's tamei tumas hameis, the time that he's tamei tumas hameis does not count towards his the length of his tumah, of his nazirus. The time that he's a mitzorah does not count towards his nazirus. To which the Gemara says, Meh, you can't compare Tumas Hameis with Mitzorah, because Tumas Hameis, after Tumas Hameis, a Nazir has to start all over again. And therefore it makes sense to say that we're more stringent also, that it does not count towards the length of the Nazirus. But when he's a Mitzorah, he doesn't have to start all over when he becomes Tahor. So therefore we might not necessarily be so stringent. Maybe we could be more lenient and to say that it does count. That at the time of his Tzaras does count towards the length of his Nazirus. Ahmed Kal V'chomer, we say no, but still, I can prove it logically. Nazirus, that if you have a fellow who declares his intent, what did we say? Back in the day, he declared his intent to embark on a 30-day Nazir experience. I think that's what we had said. So he doesn't need to get a haircut when he becomes Tahor again. He doesn't need a tiglachas and to start over again. So that hair is the hair that he's going to shave eventually. And yet, those days that he's telling me do not count for the length of his Nazirus. When he's a Mitzorah, that he's going to have to cut all the hair of his body, and he's not going to be able to shave with his current hair for his Nazirus. He's going to have to first remove it as being a Mitzorah. Lo kol shekain. So in that respect, Mitzorah is more stringent, so then certainly the length of the Mitzorah should not count towards the length of his Nazirus. So now all I know is that when he's, wow, this is how you know it's a real sugya. My throat's getting dry. My throat hasn't gotten dry in so long. So you know it's a real sugya. Now all I know is that, there's like different stages of being a Mitzorah, right? There's when you see Tzaras for the first time and you have to go get it checked out by the Kohen, and you can be put in quarantine. That's one part, is the quarantine stage. And then there's the definite stage when it's determined, that it's confirmed that you have Tzaras. There's that stage. And then once it's been determined that you're pure, you no longer have Tzaras, you have to shave all the hair of your body. And then you have to wait another week. So then there's that additional time, right? So there's the time that you're initially in quarantine, there's the time that you're actually contaminated with Tzaras, and then there's another week afterwards, until right before your second shaving. So all I know is that when he's definitely a Mitzorah, when he's contaminated, it does not count towards his Nazirus. He may sifro minayin. How do I know that also once he no longer has Tzaras and he shaves all the hair of his body once, now the Yimei Sifro, the days of counting, the next 7 days that he's counting before he could shave for a second time, how do I know that also does not count towards his Nazirus? V'dinu, I can learn it out logically. My mechaluto ton tiglachas, well, just like when he's definitely contaminated, afterwards when the Mitzorah is definitely contaminated, afterwards he's got to shave all the hair of his body. Afyumei Sifro, and so too, at the end of the next 7-day period, he also needs to shave a second time. There's some sunflower people outside, and they're thinking to themselves, let me make so much noise as I can. There's probably 2 sunflower guys. There's probably Reuven the sunflower guy and Shimon the sunflower guy. And Reuven says to Shimon, he says, Shimon, I know that Sruli is recording Babylon Talmud, and I know that it's a particularly difficult and hairy sugya today. I'm going to make as much noise as I can, and that way Sruli will mention me on Babylon Talmud and I'll be famous. It's not nice. So just like when he's definitely a Mitzorah, afterwards he needs to shave all the hair of his body. So after the 7 days of counting that follows, he then shaves the hair of his body a second time. Just like when he's definitely contaminated, those days don't count towards his Nazirus. Right, so also the 7 days that he counts after that before shaving a second time do not count towards the Nazirus. Is it possible that also the days of quarantine do not count towards his Nazirus? And I can even prove it logically, which is when he's definitely tamei tumas. What? No, when he's definitely tamei with saras, so then he's metame mishkav umoshav, which means that anything that he lies down on or sits on becomes in avatuma, just like him. V'mei esgero metame mishkav umoshav. Now, also when he's in quarantine, anything that he sits on becomes tamei like him. Im lamadto limei chaluto she'ein onlo min aminyan. So if we say that when he's definitely a mitzorah, it does not count towards his Nazirus, let's say that also when he's in quarantine, those days do not count towards his Nazirus. We say no, but you can't compare the two, because when he is definitely a mitzorah, when he's done with his definite saras, his definite contamination, afterwards, he needs to get a haircut and bring korbanos. Lefichach in onlin. That makes definite contamination particularly strict, and therefore it makes sense to say that it does not count towards his nazirus. Tomer b'mei eskero. Will you say the same thing by his quarantine? She'ein ton tiglachas, where afterwards he does not need to get a haircut after the quarantine. Ve'enu mevi korban. He doesn't bring a korban after the quarantine. If he's definitely tamei, so then he'll shave and bring a korban, but not just for the quarantine. Lefichach yalu leminyan. Therefore, I can make the argument that maybe the quarantine days should count towards his nazirus. Mikan armu. From here they said you may sifro, if you make gemaro enon lo min aminin. So from here they said that look, the days of his definite contamination, as well as the 7 days that he counts between his haircuts, they do not count towards his nazirus. But if a nazir were to be a zav or a zava, or the time of a quarantine of mitzorah, they do count towards the nazirus. Katoni miyas. Now, in this lengthy brisa we taught loim amad bimei tuma shkimavato b'enes hakodmin tuma b'mei chaluto. No, we had basically proven that the words that the Gemara mentions are kind of the wrong words, but the point is that section of the Gemara was where we proved that just like when you're tamei tumas hameis, it does not count towards the nazirus. So also when you're tamei, certainly with when you have definite contamination with saras, it does not count towards the nazirus. B'mai, and what are we talking about? Ilema b'nazirus mu'etes or b'inin gidul seir. Now, it can't be talking about when there's only 30 days left when he becomes a mitzorah, and we're saying that those days don't count towards the days of being mitzorah does not count, but the days before and afterwards do count. But if he's going to have to get his haircut from his mitzorah, from being a mitzorah, then you're still going to have 30 days of growth after that before you get your nazirus haircut. So it can't be that that's what it's talking about. Alav nazirus meruba. It must be talking about by a longer nazirus, and we're saying that the the time that he's contaminated with taras does not count towards his nazirus. So we see that those days, but the days that he's a mitzorah, do not count towards his nazirus, even by a longer nazirus, and therefore it is definitely a kasha on Rav Chizda, who said that the days that he's a mitzorah would count towards his nazirus for a longer nazirus. Man, earlier today there were people out in the park. They were like singing songs. My neighbor went out and she yelled at them. I'm telling you, she doesn't let you do anything in that park. The annoying thing is that I actually didn't mind that they were singing in the park. There are like people that make a lot more noise and she doesn't yell at them. I don't know why. Maybe she just preys on like the easier targets. But man, you can't make a you can't make a peep in that park. I'm telling you, if you sit, there's like a beautiful park right outside the house. And there are benches and everything. If you go out and chas v'shalom sit on a bench and raise your voice above like a whisper, you will get a very unpleasant yelling. This is very interesting. I mean, people are allowed mistama to talk in the bar. I don't really mind that she yells at the people because it keeps the place quiet. But the yelling itself could actually be very distracting. So sometimes I actually get distracted by her yelling and not actually what's going on outside. But okay, that was just a little detour so that we could let our brains rest for a second, and now we're going to go weiter. Zok the Mishnah Amar. So it says Rabbi Eliezer, but it makes much more sense to say Rabbi Elazar, because Rabbi Eliezer was a contemporary of Rabbi Yoshua, and here we're saying it's right Mishum Rabbi Yoshua. He's quoting Rabbi Yoshua. That wouldn't necessarily make sense, and also he's responding to Rabbi Meir. It makes sense that it's Rabbi Elazar who was a contemporary of Rabbi Meir, and not Rabbi Eliezer who was a contemporary of Rabbi Yoshua. Amar Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Elazar Mishum Rabbi Yoshua, in the name of Rabbi Yoshua, Kol Tuma min Hameis. Also, Mishum is usually, like, for example, you have Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, right? Mishum doesn't mean that you're mentioning, I think it even came up in a Gemara once. The Gemara itself, I think, even said it once, that Mishum, you're not quoting directly. And Rabbi Eliezer, I imagine, would be able to quote Rabbi Yeshua directly because they were contemporaries. Rabbi Elazar quoting Rabbi Yeshua directly, on the other hand, it's actually skipping a generation, because Rabbi Elazar was a student of Rabbi Akiva, who was a student of Rabbi Yeshua. So it would make more sense that Rabbi Elazar was saying Mishum Rabbi Yeshua. Anyways, we're going to go with Rabbi Elazar. Amar Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Elazar Mishum Rabbi Yeshua, from Rabbi Yeshua, Kol Tuma min Amez Nazir Migaleach Alel. Any Tumas Amez that a Nazir has to shave and start over for, Chayav and Aleh al Bias Mikdash, you're going to be Chayav if you go, if you go into the Beis HaMikdash in that Tomei state. V'chol Tuma min Amez she'ein Nazir Migaleach Aleh, that any Tumas Amez that a Nazir would not have to shave and start over from, Ein Chayav and Aleh al Bias Mikdash. If you go into the Beis HaMikdash with that kind of state of Tuma, you would not be Chayav. So, for example, if you have a revius of dam, for example, we had said that it would not make a nazir start over, but it would be metame ba'oel. But right, a revius dam is metame ba'oel. But we said in the Mishnah that a nazir would not have to start over. So we're saying here in the Mishnah, Rabbi Elazar is saying the name of Rabbi Yeshua, that if a fellow becomes tameh from a revius of dam and then goes into the Beis HaMikdash, he would not be chayiv, since a nazir would not be chayiv, would not have to start over from it. It doesn't make any sense to say that a revius of dam, for example, which is mitami ba'oel, and yet if a fellow goes into the Beis HaMikdash with that tumah of revius of dam from a mace, you're saying that he would not be chayiv, and yet if a dead sheretz touches a fellow, which is a lesser tumah than tumah sameis, the halacha is that you would be chayiv for going to the Beis HaMikdash. Says Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Meir, it doesn't make any sense that tumah sheretz you'd be chayiv for, but tumah sameis you'd be pater for going to the Beis HaMikdash, just because a nazir would not be chayiv to start over for it. Now says the Gemara of Rabbi Elazar Mishum Rabbi Yeshua Gamar Lo. Did Rabbi Elazar say this in the name of Rabbi Yeshua? V'amishum Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamul Gamar Lo. Rabbi Elazar didn't say it in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, who's Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. He said it in the name of Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamul. The Tanya is within the Bible. So Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Rabbi Elazar kshalachli la'adaskaya. That he said, Rabbi Elazar says that when he went to Adaskaya, Matzosi as Rabbi Yeshua ben Pesarosh. He found somebody named Rabbi Yeshua ben Pesarosh, or Yoshe v'don lifnei Rabbi Meir ba'alocha, and Rabbi Yeshua ben Pesarosh was, quoting halachis in front of Rabbi Meir. Kol tuma min ameis she'anoz megaleach aleh chayav v'neleh mishum bias mikdash, and he quoted, right, said Rabbi Yeshua ben Pesarosh, that any tumas ameis that a nazir would have to start over, would have to shave and start over. So, if you go into the Beis HaMikdash in that state, you'd be chayiv. V'chol tuma min ameis she'ein anoz megaleach aleh, and any tumas ameis that the nazir would not have to shave and start over from, ein chayav v'neleh mishum bias mikdash. So you would not be chayiv if you go into the Beis HaMikdash with that state of tumah. Omar lo, and Rabbi Meir said to Rabbi Yeshua ben Pesarosh, Al tezokal misharetz, just like he said in the Mishnah, that doesn't make any sense, because a fellow would be chayiv for going into the Beis Hamikdash with Tumas Sheretz, it doesn't make sense that he would be potter if he goes in with Tumas Hameis, just because a Nazir would not be chayiv to start over, to shave and start over with that particular Tumas Hameis. Amarti lo, and Rabbi Elazar said to Rabbi Yeshua ben Pesarosh, Kulumata Baki Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamel. Have you ever heard of Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamel? Amli Hein. He says, yes, I am. Yes, I have. So says Rabbi Elazar, Kach Amli Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamel. Well, this is what says Rabbi Elazar. This is what I heard from Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamel, Mishum Rabbi Yeshua, who quoted Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. Right, as we have said, now for the third time, that any tumah that a nazir would have to shave for, so you'd be chayiv if you go to the Beis Hamikdash with that level of tumah. Any tumah that a nazir would not have to shave for, so then you would not be chayiv for going to the Beis Hamikdash with that level of tumah. No, so we see that Rabbi Elazar, from this story, from the story in the Brisa, we see that Rabbi Elazar was tak according to Salacha, not directly from Rabbi Yeshua, but from Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamel, who quoted Rabbi Yeshua. Heve mishum Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamel gamerla. Okay, fine. So say that not that Rabbi Elazar learned it from Rabbi Yeshua, but that Rabbi Elazar learned it from Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamel. Amru Shmamina. They said that we learned from here. Kol shmaitza de misa'amr b'vei tlosa. That whenever you have a chain of three people, for example, Rabbi Elazar said the name of Rabbi Elazar of Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamel, who said the name of Rabbi Yeshua, Kadmoi Basoy Aminon Mitzioi Lo Aminon. So you don't have to name the entire chain. You don't have to say that it's Rabbi Elazar who said the name of Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamel, who said the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. You don't need to do that. You could just say Rabbi Elazar says the name of Rabbi Yeshua. Right? You can leave out the middle one. You can leave out Rabbi Yeshua, the middle link in the chain. You can leave out Rabbi Yeshua bar Mamel. Amr Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Afananami Tanina says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, I can even show you this in action in a Mishnah. Amr Nachman Alavler had said to Rabbi Gamliel Azokin, Kach Mikublanim Rabbi Miyasha. I heard the following from Rabbi Miyasha, Shekiba Me'abu, who heard from your father, Rabbi Gamliel Azokin, from your father Shimon, who heard from his father Hillel, Shekiba Menazukis, who heard from the Zugis, that if it was Hillel and Shammai, they would have heard from Shmai and Avtayun. Shkibu min Nevi'im, that the Zugas heard from the Nevi'im. Halach Moshe Misinai, straight up from Moshe Misinai. Bizarei Shevetz v'Chaydel b'Shnai v'Shlosh Mekomos. If somebody plants dill and mustard in a few different places, so he has to leave peah from each place that he planted them. Fine. With the point being that we went straight from the Nevi'im to Moshe Rabbeinu, halachal Moshe Misinai, but they didn't say anything about Yoshua and Kaleb. So we see that you don't need to mention every single link in the chain. Okay, fine. Now, says the final Mishnah in the 7th parak of Masechta Nazir. Amar Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva, Danti l'fnei Rabbi Eliezer, I said over the following halach in front of Rabbi Eliezer. This is Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua were the teachers of Rabbi Akiva. Ma'im etzem kisara she'enu metame odem ba'oil. It becomes the etzem kisara, a bone of a maize the size of a barley kernel. If a Nazir touches it, so he has to shave and start over. Even though in etzem kisara is not mitamim ba'oil, etzem kisara is only mitamim b'mago masa. So therefore, revi is damshu mitamim ba'oil, odem ba'oil. Rabbi Akiva says, logically speaking, then a revius of blood of a mace, that it is mitamim ba'oil. And certainly a nazir should have to shave and start over if he touches it. So why did the Mishnah say that he doesn't? So Amar li Rabbi Eliezer said to me, says Rabbi Akiva, Maze Akiva ein don kan mikav chomer. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer says, look, we can't make a kav chomer in this case. And when I said this to Rabbi Yeshua, Amar li Yafa Amart, Rabbi Yeshua said, look, Rabbi Akiva, you're making a good point. But look, this is the halacha that this is the halacha Moshe Misinai, that a revius of dam is a nazir does not have to start over. So the Gemara says, what is it? What's the deal? Why wasn't he able to make a kavachomer in this case? What does it mean that it's halacha Moshe Misinai? So it doesn't mean that the fact that a bone is mitame, is that halacha Moshe Misinai? V'vi is dam kavachomer, v'edon kavachomer me'alacha, and you wanna bring a kavachomer to say that, well, if etzem kisor is mitame and that's halacha Moshe Misinai, and you want to learn from there that kavachomer revi'ez dam should be mitame a nazir, and you can't learn out a kavachomer from halacha Moshe Misinai. Or dilma revi'ez dam halacha ve'etzem kisor kavachomer, or maybe it's the fact that a revi'ez dam is mitame, that ba'oel, that is a halacha Moshe Misinai, because otherwise, normally I would assume that you need a chatzi log dam in order to live, and therefore it's a chiddush that a revi'ez dam is mitame ba'ol. So that's halacha Moshe Misinai. Ve'etzem kisor kavachomer ve'indon kavachomer me'alacha, and therefore and the bone the size of a barley kernel would be what you want to learn out logically, and we can't learn out a kavachomer when it involves halacha Moshe Misinai. Tashma etzem kisora halacha. So we say that etzem kisora is halacha Moshe Misinai. Revi'ez dam kavachomer, and we're trying to learn out revi'ez dam as a kavachomer from etzem kisora. Ve'indon kavachomer me'alacha, and you cannot learn out a kavachomer from halacha Moshe Misinai. Ajan alach kohen gadol. We'll come back to you, kohen gadol. Wow. Okay, that was some daf. Well, that was daf nun vav of Masechta Nazir. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.